Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of ConverSWations, where we discuss those burning questions in that galaxy far, far away. And we've got a great topic to go with today. And with that, I had to get some help. So I went and grabbed one of the co-hosts of ConverSWations, a Star Wars podcast as well. They've been going at it for a couple of years now. Welcome, Pat. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good. And we debated a little bit about what topic to go over, and we settled on this particular one, which I think a burning question that a lot of people are interested in, because it was a very big aspect of the Legends books, and we haven't seen this yet in the canon material, and that is Gray Jedi. So the question that we're going to talk about really is basically, should this aspect of the Gray Jedi be introduced and canonized? So what are your thoughts overall right now to start this discussion? What is your overall thought about Gray Jedi?
Well, it's an interesting concept, because you've got the Jedi, the traditional view of the Jedi, which is very regimented, very strict in nature. And what you end up seeing in most of the storylines is these Jedi failing to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And that leads them to a different path, which in most cases is the dark side. So it's a tough situation to be in, because you're held to this very very regimented code where you can't have relationships, you're not supposed to form attachments. You have to study like one half of this mystical force and you not even get all the information, so you're left in the dark about some of the force, which is strange, because you would, in the quest for knowledge, most people want to know all aspects of it,
right?
And they're almost forbidden from that. So it's imperfect in its quest for perfection, and so many of the quote unquote failed Jedi fail for those reasons, because they have, either a quest for more knowledge, or they have these attachments, things like that the Jedi and the Council are basically like, you can't be that way and be a Jedi. Right. So then they end up falling to the dark side, which nobody wants. You don't want people falling to the dark side. So right. Yeah, so it's interesting, because it proposes the idea that people, creatures, aliens, beings aren't always perfect. Mm-hmm. But if you're using your knowledge and your skill and your abilities for good, then overall that's good. That's you're still on the right path, I guess.
Right.
And whether it's the official Gray Jedi that is in Legends, if that's directly canonized, I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. But I think kind of the way that the Disney-owned Star Wars has canonized things from Legends might make a little more sense, where you've got a version of the Gray Jedi that is canonized. That's maybe not what we know from Legends, maybe not translated exactly the way it was, or even not called Gray Jedi. I love the Bendu in Star Wars Rebels. He's such an interesting character, because he's almost like, because the long-standing idea of the Force is that you use the Force, you bend it to your will, right? And the Force doesn't really work that way, I don't think. And I mean, we could talk forever about the Force itself, but
Right, correct.
But I think, kind of allowing things to progress organically and by their own nature, there's a certain quality to that that's natural and it makes sense. Mm-hmm. So, to manipulate the Force for bad, obviously, people frown upon that, apparently. But the same could be said for manipulating it for good, because you're manipulating something, almost unnaturally.
That's right.
So to let the chips fall where they may is sort of a more natural, organic process. And I think that a version of that where people can tap into that and explore and utilize those abilities kind of more neutrally makes a lot of sense in this world that they've created.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think where I'm at, I'm not as people listen to me over the years, like I'm not a big resource for the Legends stories. So I don't know a lot about the gray aspect of the Jedi. Now, what I do understand of it is, typically the definition has been somebody that has tapped into both sides of the Force, right? The light side and the dark side. So if we look at somebody that could possibly fall into that category, maybe not completely, but if we look at somebody like Ahsoka, who has left the Jedi Order, but seems like she's, over the years, and we're talking 20 plus years, she's still following the Jedi Code in a way. She's carrying lightsabers. She's doing good deeds. But has she tapped into the dark side? I don't think there's any examples of that. But so if she hasn't, then is she considered a gray?
When I think of Gray Jedi, I don't love the idea of the term Gray Jedi. Just because it implies, I guess an inherent goodness, but a willingness to kind of be flexible with the rules.
Yeah.
And I would even argue that someone like Qui-Gon Jinn would also be kind of in that realm. You kind of doesn't fall in line as well as the Jedi Council would have liked, which is why he wasn't on the Jedi Council. And just the kind of manipulation he used from time to time. And same would go for an ability like the Jedi mind trick. It's not pure. It's not like good. You're not being honest. You're deceiving
That's
someone.
right.
So, even things like that, is that tapping into the dark side? I don't really know. It's innocent enough. It's like Obi-Wan's like, these aren't your droids, and now we escape. You know what I mean? So,
or give me your transport in episode 1. Give me something that I need.
Exactly. So it's like, are you putting anyone at a disadvantage? Are you hurting anyone? No. But are you being completely honest and above board? No. Right. So, so that being said, Ahsoka has used the mind trick and all. But, she certainly hasn't used Force lightning and those types of things that we traditionally see as bad or evil.
Right.
So, we see Rey do it, but anyway, it's that's a different conversation too. So, the short answer to that is, I guess she's the grayest we've seen so far.
Yes. Yeah.
And, that's intentionally reflected in her not being a Jedi when she claims in the the Clone Wars and and Rebels and all that, she's not a Jedi.
Right.
She's not. In her mind, she's not. In most lay people's minds, I think, yeah, she still is. Yeah. But in her mind, there's flaws in the Jedi that lead to people going down the wrong path.
Yep.
So in order to kind of avoid the pitfalls of the Jedi, but then again, the pitfalls of the dark side, you kind of stick to what's true to yourself. You know, like you had said earlier, when she's going through the galaxy, helping people.
Yes.
You know, in the Ahsoka novel, she is flying under the radar. She's helping people, and then when you know, in the mid part of season 7 of the Clone Wars, when she's helping the Martez sisters,
that's right.
It's not, you know, like Bail Organa or some big, you know, heavy hitter in the galaxy. It's regular people that need help.
Yeah, right.
And she's doing her part to better their lives, not to, you know, directly impact the galaxy in some major way.
Right.
Just to help people to leave the galaxy better than how she found it.
And that's what was very interesting, I think, too, when, you know, when the first episode of the Siege of Mandalore came about, you know, towards the end there, when Obi-Wan rushes in and says, the Capitol's under attack, we've got to go. And she thought that was a bad decision. Like, that was going against what, or that was further contributing to how people were viewing the Jedi. Like, they're only helping themselves, they're not helping, which is a very interesting point of view. Definitely, I think, from her angle. So I think I like where you're going with that, because I think that the way I'm kind of leaning now towards is, I think it doesn't matter. I don't think you could call it Gray Jedi, because I do think that when you are sensitive to the Force, you're either, like you said, you're either using it for good or you're using it for bad. And I think that determines whether or not you're a Jedi or a Sith. And maybe you don't always fully train to be one or become one. But if you're not one or the other, then why can't we just call them Force users?
Right.
You're a Force user, and sometimes you may use dark side Force, sometimes you may use light side Force, and we've seen, like you said, Rey seems like she can tap into both, right? I don't know. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, even it could be argued that the likes of Grogu could tap into both sides as well.
Yeah,
he did a little mini Force choke on Cara Dune, which, you know, was in an effort to protect Din. I get that, but then, like, your classmates eating cookies and he steals them. So, I mean, so it's like, you know, yes, okay, he can get away with it because he's a toddler and he doesn't know right from wrong. But the fact remains, it's like, you know, every once in a while, you're going to do something for your benefit that doesn't benefit anyone else.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I think it's just, as with most things, as with most people, you know, it's the mindset behind that. You know, what lines are you willing to cross for your cause? You know, if you have some version of a moral code that you stick to, and, you know, you kind of do these little, you know, white lies and things in terms of the mind trick and things like that. Are you doing it for good?
Yeah.
Yes. Then inherently you're good. You know, are you necessarily a Jedi? No. So I feel like, you know, just a Force user could be good or bad, and then you would follow that path towards the Jedi or towards the Sith. But just inherently, I think there can be people that use it occasionally for good or occasionally for bad without being good or being bad.
Yeah, and I think one of the clear examples of that too, probably maybe the polar opposite of Ahsoka, is Asajj, right? Ventress.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, she was going down that Jedi path, but then, you know, got pushed out. But because of, you know, being a Night Sister and, you know, being manipulated by Dooku, blah, 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 she went down the dark path. But then she had her brushes with the light. We coming back in the Dark Disciple, and if people are familiar with that storyline, but you know, so I really love her character and her journey, and so I, you know, so like I wouldn't call her a dark Jedi. You know, I would probably say she was a Force user, and she used both sides, but then it does get a little hairy when you're talking about somebody like Cal Kestis, right? Is, you know, because he only knows to be a Jedi, and he wasn't fully trained. But what do you call him? I don't know, a light side Force user, I guess. I don't, you know.
Yeah, and it's again, it comes back to, you know, I think where your mind is with it, because you know, again, Asajj has helped out Obi-Wan. You know, you've got these
helped out Ahsoka.
Yeah, exactly. You've got these bad guys that are assets and resources to our heroes. So, you know, again, it kind of muddies the waters a bit, because you look at these bad guys and you're like, oh, they're bad, and they do something good, and you're like, wait a minute, all right, maybe I have to rethink this. And then, and then you see the you know, like probably one of the most striking examples of the converse of that would be with Rey, where she's, you know, wants to do good and is doing good, and then has that ability to tap into that and kind of scare you a little bit, you know.
Totally right.
But then, you know, the fact that it scares her too is a little comforting, because it's like, well, maybe you know, maybe we don't want to go down that path. But yeah, I think that just overall, it's where your mind is when you're doing these things. Like Luke, for example, at Jabba's palace. You know, he's got the Gamorrean guard there that's
right,
stopping him. He's not going to, you know, pull a Vader and choke him out till he dies. Yeah, and he's just going to kind of brush him out of the way with a little force tickle. You know what I mean? Of the throat.
That's right.
So. So like that kind of stuff, he's not malicious with it, and you can see in his face when he does it. This is something I need to do to get you out of the way. Yeah. Whereas when you see Sidious do it, he's like enjoying like the suffering, because he's the awful person. But you know, again, so it's how you use it and what you use it for in the grand scheme of things.
So then that brings up a good point about Anakin, right? Yes. That's easily, I think, what you're saying, I think really does contribute to what he went through, all those things that we've seen in the movies, like Episode 2, and he's wiping out the Tusken Raiders.
Yeah.
What he feels in a lot. I just rewatched I can't believe I forgot the arc, but the arc in the Clone Wars where Obi-Wan fakes his death, and
yes,
and you know, he's just, you can, Anakin in those episodes, man, he is hateful, and he is seeking some destruction, and it contributes to, I think, a lot of what, and of course that's what we're talking about, right? I think some of those emotions would start taking you down that path, and you have to decide whether or not you're going to do that or not,
especially when emotion is such a huge aspect to humanity. Okay. And I mean, without emotions, we're robots. Okay. Which there's nothing wrong with droids. But the fact is, we are beings with emotion. And you see that through every aspect in Star Wars as well. So we can assume that they're emotional creatures as well. So to deny such a prevalent part of the being, that you're not supposed to have attachments. You're not supposed to, hate or want revenge. These types of things that do somewhat come naturally. The Jedi are like, no, can't do that. You got to stay away from that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're someone like Anakin, who, was taken by these space wizards when he was 10 years old from his mother, who, grown up as a slave, yeah, he's got a couple like slave buddies, that Rodian kid and all, but basically it's him and his mom.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all he had. So, it's this great opportunity. Oh, and then she can't come along, but it's a great opportunity. So, okay, fine. He still lost that relationship.
Yeah.
And so the only people he had to lean on were the Jedi. So then when you're navigating these waters of, like, how do I grow up and kind of mold myself into a man from a child, to be denied those emotions and then be shunned for them and almost shamed for having them. It's almost it almost makes you want to leave. If you're around somebody and you're being honest and open with them and saying, look, I'm having these feelings, these thoughts, and they're like, oh, I can't do that. You must be bad. It's like, well, I don't want to talk to you about this stuff. You're making me feel bad and you're super judgmental about it.
Yeah.
So, that sort of thing leads to a lack of open discussion. Okay. And then that leads to him still looking at Obi-Wan as a mentor, but not necessarily someone he can always trust, nor the Council. Okay.
That's
and
right.
The only person towards the end of Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith and a lot of the stuff in, late episode Clone Wars, the only person he was honest with was Padme and Palpatine.
Palpatine, that's right. That's right.
And that was intentional on Palpatine's part, because then he's the only one he can trust.
That's right.
And I can tell you whatever I want to manipulate you because I know you trust me. And I think most of the events in his life, especially since joining the Jedi, were manipulated to send him down that path. Yeah,
totally.
So even if he had good intentions, which he did, obviously, with a lot of the things he did, they weren't based in fact. Yeah. They were directly related to the manipulation that he was under.
Yeah, and who's to say? That's the thing too. Is one of the famous threads, obviously in Star Wars, is point of view, right? And at some point, Anakin had that point of view that that Jedi are actually bad, and I don't want to be a part of that anymore, kind of thing. Right. So, wow, that's some strong stuff. So ultimately, where have you landed now at the end of this question?
Wow. I was excited when because the Clone Wars and Rebels are one thing. I mean, they're fantastic. I love them very much. But to have read the Ahsoka novel and then not have that closure in the Clone Wars until season 7, I was very interested to see what they were doing with her in live action and kind of how they were bringing her not into canon, but into I guess the most popular of the media, which is live action.
Live action, right.
And so I was like, well, she's got the white lightsabers and all, which is kind of straight down the middle, really.
That's right.
And so it's interesting to see where they take this. And there's been no canon mention of her being a Gray Jedi or anything explicitly like that, but you get the sense that she is still a good person.
Yes.
And she is using the abilities that she has, that she's honed for good. She's helping people throughout the galaxy, and still kind of skeptical about the Jedi, especially the Jedi Code, which she saw lead her mentor down the wrong path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it's, perfection is unattainable.
Right.
You can strive for it, but to be shunned for being imperfect is super hypocritical. And so to acknowledge that and say, look, we don't have to be perfect, but if we're striving towards perfection and we're doing the best we can for those around us and trying to help people out as a whole, do we need the Jedi Code to be good people?
Exactly right. Yeah. And that's what I think that took a lot of strength for her to say, no, I'm not training Grogu. Right. Because that showed a lot of discipline, a lot of strength that what happened in the past, she saw the worst in people, even though they were trained. So that's some good stuff. I'm with you. I don't think I need the definition of a Gray Jedi in the stories that we're experiencing now. I don't think we need that. I think it does come down to, which I think comes down to basic humanity, right? Is choice of good or bad. Are you a good person? Are you a bad person? If you have the ability to manipulate the Force, are you going to use it for good or bad? And that's just I think ultimately you're a Force user, and you're either using the dark side of it or the light side of it. I mean, I think based on your actions, it's clear which ones you're doing. So I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to put labels on everything.
That's right.
But I like, the kind of some of the moral gray that they've gone into with like Rogue One and all. I think it makes sense to have that sort of less crisp delineation between light and dark, and just have others in the middle that use their Force abilities and aren't confined to those restrictions.
I think one person too that we really didn't talk about, obviously, is like Maz Kanata. She seems to be a Force user and only uses it in maybe certain situations, but she definitely feels like she's a good person. We don't really know too much about her, but that's a good example of those are interesting stories, I think, of people that are Force wielders but have no training, and what are they doing with it? And those are interesting stories.
Yeah, and especially when you have these innate abilities, in the times of the High Republic, obviously everyone shipped off to the core to be trained, because you have those resources. But in the fall of the Jedi, you're still going to have people with these innate abilities.
Yes.
But with no one to train them.
And that's right. Yeah, because they're out there still.
Exactly. So you're going to have people that are, levitating objects and influencing others and having these abilities to do things. And, it's unrealistic to think that every one of them is going to have an allegiance or a, an inherent, draw to the light side or the dark side. And that they just exist in their, moisture farm doing their thing, living their lives, and kind of having this ability.
That's right. Well, Pat, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank that we've had for this. This has been fantastic. I feel like we can go forever on this, but we will save it for later.
All right.
Thank you for taking the time, man, and joining me for this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an awesome talk. Again, I think we just scratched the surface.
We did,
but I mean, it was a fun chat for sure.
Well, so what we'll do then is whenever we do finally get this Ahsoka series, let's come back and dive into that, because we're going to get a whole bunch more Jedi use out of her, and whether or not that where that goes. You know, there's some talk about some. I don't know if you saw that. There's a rumor about the dark Force user from the Legends Thrawn books that may actually show up in this series. So we'll see. I'm not I can't remember him. That was a long time since I read that. But
yeah, with Dave Filoni being so hands-on with all of this stuff, I will be ecstatic about anything that happens.
Yeah, I know. Right?
But I also won't be surprised that they're willing to go anywhere, because he's exceptional at storytelling, and he's got such a great tap into Star Wars mythos and lore, and I'm just excited to see whatever he does, because it's going to be great. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. And great. And I'd love for you to come back and talk about it with me. That'd be fantastic. So everybody out there, go check Pat and Charles out. ConverSWations.com. They're on all the podcast feeds. You can follow them at Swations on Twitter. They do a lot on there, and they're great pluggers of the community. I really appreciate you guys plugging us as well.
Of course.
Yeah, you guys are fantastic. So we will be back with you later. And then, of course, coming soon, we've got a talk with Charles also. We're going to bring him on and do a discussion, and that will drop here shortly also. So, Pat, appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We love having a good time and have great talks, and living in Star Wars. So it's been a blast. Thanks, buddy.
It is like the perfect time to be a fan, right? I mean, all of this stuff coming out.
25 years ago, we were made fun of. Now we're like geek gods, okay?
That's exactly right. It took that long, but hey, we made it, man. That's awesome.
We suffered through. That's our 40 years in the desert right there.
Oh, that's awesome. I appreciate everybody for watching and listening. Take care. For Pat, I'm Dave. May the Force be with you.